It's a great pleasure to be here with you to formally open Through Soldiers' Eyes.
Welcome to our Through Soldiers' Eyes exhibition, where you'll see a combination of heritage and contemporary artworks created by members of our armed forces community, both past and present. Through Soldiers' Eyes is not just an exhibition, it's a community engagement project as well, which has been running since the beginning of 2021. It combines working with the armed forces families, veterans, children, spouses, wives, widows. It's a chance to raise the awareness with the wider community of those people who live and work amongst us, and to celebrate their contribution to our lives, which is often unseen and unheard.
Since being a teenager, becoming 30, that's all I know now in my life.
It doesn't take a day or 2 days or a month to be able to work through stuff. Sometimes it takes a long time.
The intention of Through Soldiers' Eyes is to take its audience on a journey of armed forces life in times of peace, conflict, repatriation and rehabilitation. The exhibition is not a documentary of war, but a momentary snapshot of personal experiences. The exhibition also demonstrates the power of creativity and art to make connections and to understand and process pain and trauma.
You can't go through anything that is so life-changing without it affecting you.
We start with the Miracle of Eep, which shows Lieutenant Colonel Ernest Vaux leading his battalion in 1915. Lieutenant Colonel Vaux is the grandfather of Di Williamson, who has been teaching art with the veterans and running our veterans art sessions online during lockdown. We move on to Roland Bradford. Lieutenant Colonel Roland Bradford, one of the 4 Bradford brothers who was a recipient of the VC in the First World War. He has a relevance in terms of art because of 2 of the pieces that he commissioned for his soldiers. He also was the adjutant for Lieutenant Colonel Vaux at one point during the war. We wanted to show in this exhibition some of the trench art and the sketches and paintings that were done by soldiers in the First World War from the DLI. We decided to theme each of the panels and recreate the images digitally because they are so old and very small. Each panel tells its own story, and each panel also includes some poetry. The huge painting is a centrepiece of the exhibition, and it was painted by Gerald Hudson and depicts the attack of the 2nd DLI at Hooge on the 9th of August 1915. It's also one of the images we used to recreate our World War I interactive trench experience, in which it was animated and brought to life both visually and with a script telling the story of DLI soldiers.
Punched against each other for warmth. Occasionally you drift off.
We dressed the trench as a set, like you would in a theatre production, and we used 14 of the First World War sketches, which we gave to a scriptwriter to create a story around through his research from the DLI. We then gave those images to an animator in the order that the scriptwriter had used them and created a 10-minute immersive First World War trench experience. The script was performed by 4 members of Bravo 22 Company, which is supported by the Royal British Legion.
Push through the crowd, but all that I see is soldiers, mud, and I'm back in the trench in this hell.
Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you bellow.
The trench art is very important, the objects that we see here. It's something which traditionally emerged round about World War I, maybe a little bit beforehand, but is still relevant today.
Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile.
The depiction of cartoons is very important. We didn't have mobile phones, we didn't have social media, and we didn't have instant news in those days, in World War I and World War II, and cartoons were used a lot to tell people what was happening, not only in the newspapers and the magazines, but also by the soldiers themselves, a little bit of light relief for themselves when they were creating them.
Men will still say, this was their finest hour.
This poem has been of particular interest to visitors and something which has really hit a nerve. A lot of people asked if it was a poem that was written recently. It wasn't, it was written in 1919, but its relevance today to some of our veterans was very obvious.
Can you give this ex-serviceman a job or help him by buying this card? It's just a simple story that I want to tell you. Yet in spite of its simplicity, it is, alas, too true. But I'm a disabled soldier who once answered duty's call, now forgotten by my country, set to wither and to fall. When I saw that I was needed, I enlisted full of pride. They said I was a hero then, but now I'm cast aside. Like the song the Call Playthings, I am one of England's toys. Life is but a drama with its sorrows and its joys.
A lot of the DLI collection also showed various places around the world where the DLI have been deployed, and some of these are quite interesting, particularly the third one, which shows Iraq in 1942. And we've had a lot of questions about that because people didn't realise that we were actually there. This painting's on loan from Usher Historic House and Gardens and shows the soldiers disembarking from the ship at Gallipoli. This is where we move from the historical and heritage imagery into the contemporary. And Alison Baskerville, her work as a photographer and as a veteran, is incredibly important. Throughout the Through Soldiers' Eyes project, we've worked with a lot of female veterans and current serving personnel too. So it was very important to capture their thoughts and feelings. We specifically wanted a space within the exhibition which was a quiet space where people could come and reflect on what they were seeing. This is where we decided to put the creative writing. Within the quiet pod, we've got some postcards, all of which were designed by members of the online art group, and we chose 6 designs. Visitors can choose their own postcard. They can tear off the top part and keep it. And on the back, it's got all of the partners in the project, so that if they need signposting or they want any help or support or just information, we can let them know how to get in touch with the organisations. The bottom part is just a very, very brief questionnaire and a little blank space where they can put their thoughts and feelings, and then pop it in the post box, which was made by Veterans Woodcraft. These windows were designed and built by the guys at Veterans Woodcraft in Newton Aycliffe. They were designed specifically to show the work of the online art group, which is part of the Art for Wellbeing, which is run from the hub at Newton Aycliffe. And similarly, the things that we see in the other window have also been created by members of the Veterans Community Hub and Veterans Woodcraft. Veteran and photographer Simon Green worked with us on this part of the project. These 3 large images are his own images from his Breathe collection. The smaller images are part of a community project that he did in Stanley and Concert in County Durham with a group of veterans with their cameras. They looked at everyday objects and recognisable places and how they equate those with their military service. Ian Forsyth is a locally based press photographer who works around the world, but who is also a veteran of 22 years service. When talking to Ian and looking at his portfolio, we wanted to use his work to show the things that soldiers and military personnel see when they're deployed. The people, the places, the cultures, the landscapes. Izzy Shaw's piece was the first piece that we commissioned for this exhibition, and the piece that we used to promote the exhibition along with one of the historical pieces. Izzy works for the Royal British Legion, based down in Plymouth, and her pen and ink drawings are absolutely incredible. Mick Graham is an artist based in Chesley Street and a veteran of 14 years service. The majority of his work is based around his experience as a tank commander, and his work is incredibly detailed. He was commissioned earlier this year by Royal Mail to produce a set of stamps showing military vehicles, which were published on the 1st of September 2021. Hugh became an artist as part of his PTSD rehabilitation and therapy, and is now quite an accomplished artist. These are Angela's actual parade shoes from when she was serving full-time in the military. Angela is now a reservist and works with veterans and supports their mental health and well-being through creative activities. Jill is a member of our online art group, working with Paul and Di, and some of her work is also in the windows that we saw earlier. These are 2 pieces of Jill's that represent her journey as a military wife and now a military widow after sadly losing her husband in 2003. And next to it we see Emily's work. Emily was deployed several times around the world, doing 2 tours of Iraq, and again some of her work is in the windows, and this is one of her larger pieces.
Anything you do with your hands, whether it's working with woodwork, working with metal, anything that's kind of kinesthetic, it allows your brain to take over, and automatically you're focusing on that part and not on other bits.
We have a number of pieces of Paul Kaplan's work. Paul is one of the art tutors for the group whose work you see in the windows. Paul's work is very emotive. It very much deals with his flashbacks, his journey through PTSD and rehabilitation, and it brings forth quite an emotion when you see it. It's had quite a profound effect on visitors, And it's not only his painted artwork, but also his woodwork as well. We didn't just want to show the artwork of people who'd actually served, but also those who support and sit in the background maybe, that we're not always aware of. The wives, the husbands, and the children of those who were deployed. Hazel, who's the artist of the mural, travelled around the world during her childhood with each of her parents' deployments, and this shows her journey growing up from a young child to a young adult, and all of the places she's lived and the experiences that she's had.
I might see things that I recognise, but my subconscious recognises things that I don't see. It's protecting me, I think. It protected me from danger because it still thinks I'm in a combat zone. It still thinks my life's under threat.
The 3 pieces of sculpture in the exhibition are quite important for me because they draw the eye and they draw your imagination, your attention. You want to go closer, you want to see exactly what the sculptor John Cutting had in mind when he created all 3 of these pieces. Each one has its very own specific story and is a way in which John works through his complex PTSD diagnosis. It was really important for us to light these sympathetically to really bring them to life. In the 12 weeks of this exhibition's run, we've had just under 9,000 people visit from as far away as London, Birmingham and the north of Scotland. We've also had schools visits, students from the local college and many, many veterans and their families. And it's been an incredible experience to work with all of those people. We've also had 2 satellite exhibitions as a response to this as well. One in Seaham for 5 days over Remembrance Weekend and one in Stanley in County Durham for 2 weeks either side of Remembrance Weekend. They've had some of the panels from the heritage side of the exhibition with the DLI images and poetry, as well as some of the contemporary artworks and sculptures and models.